Don't look for the enemy far away. The dagger is as close as your breath.
There was a faint smudge from my lipstick on the rim of the coffee cup sitting on the table. I don't usually dwell on details. But that morning, every little sign in the house seemed to catch my eye. There was a strange feeling in the house, as if someone had changed things around. My name is Elena. I've been married to Mark for 3 years. We have the kind of life most people envy. We have a new house, steady jobs, weekend breakfasts, our travel routines. A perfect life we chose together. From the outside, everything looked fine. But the inside of a house isn't as calm as the picture on the outside. You can't understand that without stepping inside, without breathing the air in that house. That day, Mark's voice dropped in a strange way as he talked on the phone. Maybe he had done this before. But I think I was noticing it for the first time. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. It was a gentle question. It was a question asked without concern. Just casually. At least, I wanted him to think so. Mark answered with a smile, never taking his eyes off me. "Sarah. From our office." She called to talk about the presentation. Sarah had just joined Mark's team. I had heard her name before. I had also seen her from a distance once. She had well-groomed hair and a very confident demeanor. No other details remained in my mind. I didn't want to panic. Thinking I could shake off the thoughts in my head, I nodded and turned back to the kitchen. Doubt weighed heavily, and this morning in this kitchen, I felt like I was being crushed under that weight. Mark had gone into the shower, leaving his phone on the table. The screen was facing up. At first, I got angry at myself. "Don't look at the phone," I told myself. Then I said no. This would give me clear proof of the only thing I was sure of. I wasn't curious, I was sure. A notification came to his phone. The screen lit up. A message from Sarah. "Sarah. Last night was wonderful." Same hotel again? I was stuck on those words. A short, concise sentence. No emotion, no emojis. No confession. Maybe a long paragraph wouldn't have hurt me so much. But that one sentence said it all. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't act out. It was just that, in that moment, the world stopped for me. Some things broke, lost their meaning. It was as if I was seeing myself from the outside. Everything drifted away from me. I didn't even touch my phone. Because in that moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. When I walked out that door, everything would be over, and I didn't want it to happen in a hurry. Life was offering me 2 choices. I could destroy everything, yell at Mark, and humiliate myself. Or I could prove the truth firmly and end it with dignity. I chose the second option. As cheerful voices came from the shower, I began sipping my coffee. I took a small notebook with me, one where I wrote down ideas that came to mind and sometimes made shopping lists. I wrote the date at the top of the page. "Today," I said. "Today is the first day of my rebirth." Mark came out of the bathroom and started drying his hair. He slowly came over to me and said, "Why are you so quiet? Did something happen?" I looked at his face, my eyes never leaving him for a moment. "No," I said. "I'm just a little tired." For the first time, I had the chance to really observe him. His ease, his walk, his speech. There was no sense of guilt about keeping a secret. There was a familiar ease. Mark picked up his phone from the table and put it in his pocket. He didn't even look at the screen, as if nothing had happened. But I knew. And knowing this gave me incredible strength. I had a meeting at work in the afternoon. My body was there, but my mind definitely wasn't. My mind was working like a detective. I thought about the times Mark had recently called overtime. The nights he came home late, the work meetings, the moments when the phone turned upside down. Even the device he took with him into the bathroom. For a moment, I thought I felt sorry for myself, but I didn't. On the contrary, I was incredibly clear-headed. When we got home that evening, Mark put a bottle of wine on the table. "We need to relax a little," he said. He had that familiar, reassuring smile on his face. I replied, "Sure, let's relax." While pouring the wine, another notification popped up on Mark's phone. This time I couldn't see what it was because he quickly closed the screen and put his phone in his pocket. Even though I couldn't see it, I knew now. Something was going on. I wasn't going to be the one watching, the one crying. This time I was going to keep a record. The next day when I woke up, Mark was already dressed. He was getting ready in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie while reading something on his phone. He glanced at me from the side. "I have a presentation today," he said. "I might be a little late." The word presentation felt like a code now. Something inside me snapped, but not a single muscle on my face twitched. I yawned and acted normal. "Okay," I said. I added that I was going to my mom's that evening anyway. It was the first time I had lied to him. But I didn't feel guilty, because it was necessary to maintain the balance in a way. When Mark left the house, I sat alone in the kitchen. I looked around the house. I looked in the fridge at the shopping bags, the grocery lists. Everything looked so normal. But nothing was normal for us anymore. I opened my little notebook. I added another date under the first heading I'd written. I wrote it down carefully and in detail. Don't rush. Gather the evidence. Stay quiet. I hadn't touched Mark's phone. There was no need to. Mark's situation was no longer just about the phone. He had a relationship, habits, and almost another life now. That same day after work, I went to the neighborhood where Mark worked. I found a place to park my car across the street. I wasn't panicking or had my heart racing. That scared me even more. I thought I would be very panicked. It turns out that in moments like this, you feel completely empty inside. What remains is determination and a clear stance. At the entrance to the office, there were people smoking, laughing, talking on their phones. I was trying to spot Mark, but I couldn't see him at first. I decided to wait a little longer. Then I saw him come out the door with someone else beside him, Sarah. I had seen him from a distance once before, but now I could see everything even more clearly. They were walking too close together. It was too much for a coworker. I saw Mark smiling and how he looked at Sarah. So that look and smile weren't just for me. Mark wasn't mine. They walked into the cafe together. I could see them easily through the window. Sarah touched Mark's wrist for a brief moment. That moment felt longer than any lengthy description could convey to me. I engraved everything I saw into my mind. That's why I didn't take notes in my notebook. I didn't want to forget these images. About half an hour later, they left the cafe. They got straight into Sarah's car and drove away. That's how I saw with my own eyes what he meant by presentation. I started following them. Unfortunately, the traffic was heavy, making my job difficult. But I noticed that Mark wasn't in a hurry. They were moving calmly. A short time later, they stopped in front of a city hotel. Newly built, close to business centers, a place that looks like it was made for business meetings or such getaways. I parked a few blocks away. At that moment, I tried to stop my trembling hands. I didn't need to go inside, so I wanted to wait quietly outside. What difference would it make if I went inside? I'd already seen what I needed to see. The person approaching the reception desk was Sarah, not Mark. She was the one calling the shots. It was a small detail, perhaps, but it told me something. Sarah had set this up. Everything was proceeding as if according to a plan. Sarah handed Mark the card given by the receptionist. And Mark took the card without question. They headed for the elevator together. I was waiting outside. I was watching how my life was changing. I was now entering another dimension, and I was watching it from the outside. I went back to the car. I wrote down the hotel's name, date, time, location, everything. I went to the hotel's website and looked at the weekday prices. I examined the hotel in its entirety. I found a cafe during the rush hour. I ordered myself a coffee. The barista asked my name to write it on the cup. Elena, I said. It was the only thing that felt like mine in days. My name. About 3 hours later, Mark came out of the hotel. He was alone, checked his phone, and then walked to the car. 10 minutes later, Sarah came out. She smoothed her clothes, glanced around briefly, got into her car, and drove away. Of course they would leave separately. That was part of the plan. When Mark came home, his face was perfectly normal. Too normal? His shirt was wrinkled. But he could pass that off as office fatigue. As he took off his shoes, the words slipped out of his mouth. The presentation took longer than I expected. I'm exhausted. I looked deep into his eyes and smiled. Good job. You take a shower if you want. I'll prepare something to eat, I said. As he walked toward the bathroom, he left his phone on the table. But I didn't need it anymore. Everything was now in my hands. There was a plan, an order, a lie. When Mark fell asleep, I was sitting in the living room. I opened my little notebook and wrote at the bottom, I know everything. But he doesn't know that. I turned to the next page and wrote another new heading. How am I going to wrap this up? I started listing the things I had. Hotel records, timelines, and the mysterious woman Sarah. I need to find out who she is. A large part of this story was Mark's betrayal, yes. But Sarah also had a role, and it seemed bigger than I had imagined. That night, I barely slept until morning. Mark was sleeping peacefully, breathing steadily. I, on the other hand, was finalizing my plan. This wasn't just a matter of deception for me. What was at stake was my life, and there were two people trying to destroy it. When morning came, I decided to take the day off. I was going to the hotel. When I arrived at the hotel, I didn't panic. Right now, I was a complete professional. I went to the cafe where I had sat the day before, opened my laptop, and ordered myself a coffee. I needed to access the hotel's employee information, so I started researching. I came across the profile of the woman working at the reception. Her profile was open, and there were mutual connections. One of those connections was Sarah by chance. You can always find a trace somewhere. You just need to know where to look for it. I messaged the woman working at the reception desk. Her name was Emily. I introduced myself as a consultant. I said I wanted to have a conversation about customer experience. Yes, I lied again, but this time I told the lie for protection. Emily accepted my offer. About 2 days later, we met at another cafe. I asked her questions about the reservation process, confidentiality, and the process itself. Then I slowly began to change the subject. I started by saying, there's something I'm curious about. If some customers come regularly but are always with different people, does that bother you? Emily paused as if trying to understand. She frowned slightly. I don't understand why you're asking that, she said. Smiling, I said, it's for psychological research. She thought for a moment. Then she sighed and continued. Yes, there is someone like that, she said. She's been coming for a long time. The same woman, but always with different men. I felt a huge explosion inside me, but my face didn't twitch even slightly. Who is this woman? I asked. Emily didn't say her name. She began to describe her. Her description pointed to only one person, Sarah. Okay, I said. The men who came with this woman. What kind of people are they? Are any of them married? A pained smile appeared on her face. Yes, she said. Most of them wore rings. At that moment, everything fell into place. The fog lifted and the story was complete. Sarah wasn't just Mark's lover. She was the one who set the rules. She was like a professional actress. She experienced the same thing with everyone, didn't get attached to anyone, acted according to the situation. She read the emptiness of marriages, men's greatest weaknesses, their fatigue. She was a rule setter, and Mark was just the next customer. What Mark didn't know was this. I was no longer his wife. I was his mirror. When I left the cafe and returned home, Mark was in the living room. He was looking at his phone. I sat down next to him. "Mark," I said. It was the first time I had said his name differently. There was not the slightest hint of love in it. There was no tremor, only clarity. "Yes," he said. I had caught his attention. "I have a surprise for you on Friday night," I said. His eyebrows rose. "What surprise?" "Dress nicely, please," I said. "Sarah will be there too." The color drained from his face. He turned pale. His eyes stared into space for a moment. "What? What do you mean?" he said. I stood up. I took my agenda. I put it in front of him. I showed him the dates. The name of the hotel. The times. The days. I presented all the evidence I had gathered before him. "Please don't try to deny this," I said. "Denial only prolongs the process and serves no other purpose." Mark didn't speak. He couldn't speak. What could he say? I continued talking. "We'll all go to the hotel on Friday," I said. "Me, you, and Sarah." "Are you crazy?" he said. He didn't understand. He was angry. "No," I said. "I'm just waking up." When Friday came, Mark was silent. He hadn't been able to say anything to Sarah, because he had also begun to realize that Sarah wasn't interested in him, but in the arrangement. I didn't know when he had realized this. We went to the hotel together. When Sarah saw us in the lobby, the smile on her face froze. She didn't know what to say, what to feel. I walked over to her. "Hello," I said. "I'm Elena, Mark's wife." Sarah couldn't speak. I turned back to the reception desk. "Emily," I said. "Can you please prepare the records for the last 6 months?" Same name, different partners. Emily nodded. Mark collapsed. Seeing that look on his face didn't faze me. Sarah tried to escape, but security closed the door. Because I had spoken to them beforehand. Everything was going according to my plan. The records were placed on the table. Everything was there. Names, times, room numbers. Mark's name, Sarah's name, and other men before him. Mark covered his face with his hands. Sarah was silent. I, on the other hand, breathed easily for the first time. I was officially experiencing the triumph of determination. "I won't yell," I said. "I'm not seeking revenge. I'm just making the truth visible. I'm choosing myself now." I turned to Mark. "Pack your things tonight," I said. "You're leaving the house." I looked at Sarah. "And you," I said, "from now on when you enter someone's life, don't forget that someone like me might be waiting for you." Nothing broke that day. No one cried. The police weren't called. But 2 lives were destroyed. Mine, however, was rebuilt. I rebuilt myself that day. That evening, I returned home alone. The same walls, the same couch, the same kitchen. But everything was different. I opened my diary. On the last page I wrote, "They betrayed me. But they didn't defeat me. In this story, I was the winner." And I closed the diary. Because this story wasn't theirs. It was mine.